A king stood at the edge of Lough Derravaragh at dusk and called 4 names into the water. He called for his daughter Fionnuala. He called for his son Aobh. He called for his twin sons Fiachra and Con. No human voice answered him, but on the lake, 4 white swans turned their long necks toward the king, and 4 human voices, weeping, called him father in return. This is the oldest grief in Ireland. It is older than the white-robed saints who came later with their bells. It is the story of King Lir of the Tuatha De Danann and of the 4 children of his first wife, Aobh, and of what was done to them by the woman who came after her. Lir was a high lord of the people of the goddess Danu, in the time when Ireland was still ruled by the old gods. His hall stood at Siad Fiona Chaid, on a low hill above the misted meadows of the Midlands, and it was full of music and gold work and quiet honor. He had married Aobh, daughter of Bodbderg, and she had borne him 4 bright children. And then, in the bearing of the 4th child, she had died. There was no grief in Ireland that year like the grief of Lir, except the grief of his 4 children who were too small to understand where their mother had gone and too old not to know that she was gone. Aobh had a sister. Her name was Aoife, and she was the elder of the 2. When the year of mourning was over, Bodbderg sent Aoife to Lir to be his second wife. It seemed at first a thing well done. Aoife was beautiful, and she was wise in the old learnings, and at first she loved the 4 children for her dead sister's sake. The children loved her in return. But years pass, and the High King Bodbderg came often from his hall to visit Lir. When he came, he set the 4 children at his right hand and showed them more love than he showed his own daughter who had married their father. He brought them gifts of gold. He set Fionnuala on his knee and called her the brightest child in Ireland. Aoife saw this, and she said nothing. But inside her, where no one could see, the love for the 4 children turned, year by year, into a cold and patient sickness. She began to keep, in a carved box at the foot of her bed, an old druidical wand that had been her grandmother's. She did not tell Lir she had it. In the summer of the 4th year of her marriage, Aoife took the 4 children in a chariot to visit their grandfather Bodbderg. The road passed Lough Derravaragh, where the water lies still and gold in the long evenings. Aoife told the children they would stop and bathe. Fionnuala did not want to go in. She had dreamed 3 nights in a row of cold water and of a voice she could not place. But she was a child of the Tuatha De Danann, and a child does what a stepmother asks. She gave her gold torque into Aoife's hand and stepped into the lake with her 3 brothers. When all 4 of them were standing to the waist in the still water of Derravaragh, Aoife took the druid wand from beneath her cloak, and she struck the water once on each side of each child. The 4 white shapes of children went down into the lake. 4 white swans rose in their places. Aoife stood on the shore, and her voice carried over the water with the cold authority of the old learnings.
300 years you shall pass on the lake at Derravaragh, 300 years upon the cold strait of Moyle, between Ireland and Scotland, 300 years upon the wild western sea at Iorras Domhnann. 900 years before any voice shall release you. I leave you your human speech, and I leave you your singing, that you may know what you have lost.
When the children did not return with Aoife to Bodbderg's hall, the High King sent for her. He looked at her for a long time. Then he made her speak. When the truth of what she had done was known, Bodbderg lifted his own wand and turned her into a demon of the air and bade her wander Ireland on the cold wind forever, neither resting nor sleeping. She has not stopped wandering yet. Lir came to Lough Derravaragh and called 4 names into the water at dusk. The 4 swans answered him in their human voices. He could not lift the curse, for it had been spoken with a true old learning wand, and only the working out of its years could end it. So Lir built his hall on the shore of Derravaragh. And all Ireland came to that lake, lords and farmers, druids and harpers, to hear the 4 swans sing. It was the only music in Ireland that was worth a day's journey. 300 years passed. Lir grew old and died. The lords who had loved the swans grew old and died. The farmers who had brought their children to the shore grew old and died. The children who had stood by the lake holding their mother's hands grew old, and brought their own children and grew old again, and died. The 300 years ended. The 4 swans rose from Lough Derravaragh and flew north and east, and they came down on the cold Strait of Moyle between Ireland and Scotland, and there their 300 years of suffering began. The Strait of Moyle is not a lake. It is the meeting of 2 seas, and the wind comes down it in winter as if it has waited a year to be cruel. The first storm broke the swans apart. Fionnuala flew up and down the night water and could not find her 3 brothers. When at last she found them, frozen and half dead among the rocks of Carreg she covered Aobh under her right wing, and Fiachra and Con under her left, and she warmed them through the night with her own body, and she sang to them,
"Sleep, my brothers. The sea shall not have you tonight. The cold shall not have you. I am here. I will be here in the morning. The dawn shall come, and it shall not be the last dawn." Ooh.
She sang that song many nights on the Strait of Moyle. There were nights when she did not believe it herself, but she sang it anyway, because she was the eldest, and there was no one else who would sing it to them. The 300 years on Moyle ended. The 4 swans flew west and came down on the wild Atlantic at Iorras Domhnann, which the English later called Erris. There is no shelter there. There is only the sea and the cliffs and the long wind. For 300 years they lived on that water. In the 1st century, they heard the old chants of the druids on the wind. In the 2nd century, the chants grew faint. In the 3rd century, the chants ceased, and there came in their place a new sound the swans had never heard. A small bell, struck slowly, far inland. The old gods were leaving Ireland. The bell had come. The 4 swans were no longer young in their bodies, though their voices remained human. They had been on water for 800 years. Their feathers were the only feathers anywhere along that coast that had not been the feathers of an ordinary bird. On the shore of Iorras Domhnann, a holy man built a small stone cell. His name was Mochaomhog. He lived alone, and he prayed, and he rang a small bronze bell at the hours. The 4 swans came in close to his shore and listened. After many tides, Mochaomhog called to them by their names, which he had learned in a dream, and the 4 swans came up on his beach. He hung a fine silver chain about the neck of each, 2 chains linking them as pairs, and brought them inside to live near his fire. It happened in that year that Lyrnan, son of the king of Connacht, took a wife from Munster. His new wife heard of the speaking swans of Iorras, and she desired them as a wedding gift. Lyrnan sent his men to the cell of Mochaomhog. They put their hands on the silver chains of the 4 swans, and they pulled. The bell of Mochaomhog rang. Where the 4 swans had stood on the small stone floor of the cell of Mochaomhog, there now stood 4 bodies. They were withered. They were ancient. Fionnuala was a white-haired woman bent double by the weight of 900 years. Aoibh and Fiachra and Con were 3 ancient old men, more bone than body, and the years they had carried were beginning to take them even as they stood. Fionnuala said, "Father Mochaomhog, baptize us now, before the years take us. Bury us in one grave in the old way of our people. Bury me upright in the center. Bury Aoibh in front of me. Bury Fiachra and Con at my right hand and my left, as I held them on the Strait of Moyle. Mochaomhog baptized them in running water. They died as the water ran. He buried them in the old way they had asked, under one cairn on the western shore of Ireland. He carved their 4 names in Aobh on the standing stone above them. The place of the cairn is still known on the western edge of Ireland, where the sea is older than the gods. And on certain nights, when the wind is right off Iorras Domhnann, country people say that 4 voices can still be heard, faintly in human speech, singing on the cold water. This was Forgotten Fables. Follow the channel when you want the next story the loud world forgot.